we welcome everybody. My name is Justin Phillips. Welcome to the Good Life Show, where it's my passion to bring to you information of health and wellness and prosperity, to help educate you and empower you to make better decisions and to help us make a healthier, happier, and more prosperous world. I'm very excited today to have some guest speakers here that have made a big difference in my life and continuing to educate me and make a big difference in my life. And that is the amazing Cyril Bourke, our main guest speaker, and Chris Henderson.
Hi, Chris.
Extraordinary men and have done great things in their own right. Thanks for joining us, fellas. You're welcome to unmute yourself if you'd like to, Chris.
Cool, thank you.
Fantastic. So I'm going to introduce to you, Cyril Bourke is our main speaker for today, but these two often do presentations together, so they'll bounce off each other. You know, put the two bobs worth in. It's always good to have someone to bounce off when you're doing these kind of conversations. And today's interview / presentation is really around busting EMFs and some of the dangers of them. And so I was introduced through David Penrose, who's on the call, to Chris Henderson, to Cyril Bourke. So 6 degrees of separation, we know everyone sort of thing, right? So when I was going through a major health crisis from Lyme disease, mycoplasma, and Hashimoto's back in 2013, I found that I just started to get a whole lot of things, signs and symptoms where if I touched a phone, it would tingle and it would hurt. If I was on a phone call on the phone, it would hurt. My head would get hot. I was sleeping in a position in my bed where I was waking up every morning feeling like my head was in a microwave, massive headaches and all sorts of things. And even like just electrical fields. And I was starting to feel things that weren't normal. And I was actually really struggling with my health at the time. I've become hypersensitive. And I started looking into this. And I found that Sweden has a syndrome called Electromagnetic Sensitivity Syndrome, which is a recognized medical diagnosis. And I had all the symptoms. And I was like, what is going on? Now, I've always had a mobile my entire work life. Even when I was a young fella, I had the big bricks that they had back then. Been on call most of my life, been around mobile phones, devices, iPads, cellular, Wi-Fi, a lot of my life. And it was at this point, 2012, 2013, I started to become aware of the dangers and the impacts that it had on me. And so that's where this all started. But now, nearly 11 years later, those influences in our life have just continued to expand. And I believe it's very important to get this message out to the world, to learn more about this and then to learn about the solutions that we can gain from, from the great technology that we have today. And that's why it's my very great pleasure to introduce the amazing Cyril Bourke. Cyril Bourke has founded his own company called EMF Busters. And he is the top, if not the top, definitely one of the top of, in my opinion, of Australians' EMF experts in not only testing for these electrical fields and magnetic fields, but also to provide solutions to minimize these dangers on us. So Cyril and Chris do lots of presentations around the place, educating people. Chris is more of an expert in blue light and light therapy and so forth. So stay tuned for part 2 next week. Same time, same place. Chris is going to come back, hopefully Cyril too, and we're going to talk more about light. But today we're going to hand over to Chris to really talk, to Cyril, to really talk about what he does and how he tests and provides solutions for EMF. Sound all right, Cyril?
Absolutely, yeah. Thanks for inviting me on, and good morning to the rest of the team there. Hi, Dave. Hi, I can't quite see. That's a beautiful background you got there. And hi, Steve. How you doing? And I'm certain we've got a lot more people viewing from the other links here. Yeah, look.
Absolutely. We're going out the World Wide Web.
Right. So
what I wanted to talk about, or start the conversation of, Cyril, is a little bit about your background, if you don't mind sharing some of that. We did have a little bit on the flyer, but from being in the radio communications, radio electronics, like being an engineer for IBM, then actually being in the British military and being in signals and communications, and then going to the gas and oil industry, quite a high level, industrial kind of understanding of frequencies and so forth. Then having a health crisis and becoming into the wellness and health industry, which is what I've been a part of for 27 years, specializing in pain and looking at the frequency of the body. and actually designing a machine, the MiHealth NES machine. And then from that experience and running that clinic, very successful clinic for 8 years, you were treating what the Australian rugby team or cricket team it was, the Western Australian rugby team, high-end athletes in health. You found all this data that EMF was causing a lot of problems, and that's what sort of caused you to go into this field, correct?
Yeah, we ended up treating a lot of different athletes from a whole range of things, including the Olympic teams and a lot of the public as well on the Sunshine Coast. So we were using technology which actually had a scanning system that allowed us to divide up some of the toxins and issues that the body was seeing, and that's where we started to find more and more and more. Eventually, it became the focus for me of looking at EMF, electromagnetic frequencies, that became obvious. I mean, you were looking at nutrition, and you're looking at lots of other things as well, hydration and all these other things, but the issues just kept piling back to EMF. And when we started making changes for clients' environments, we saw changes in the whole spectrum of health issues. So it became the most effective point of starting to make changes for people. And the Dr. Klinghardt, who's a lot of your watchers might know of him, Dietrich Klinghardt, he literally divides his client base in half. He says, those that pay attention and change their EMF exposure, they start changing their health and they get better and eventually resolve the issues. Where those who actually decide, no, that's not something they're worried about, they don't want to deal with it, they don't change, they don't get better. And he's repeatedly said that in the public, that the clients that do change their EMF exposure, they're the ones that can finally resolve their health issues. It's become quite a terrible situation where it's poo-pooed by industry and governments. They don't want you to talk about EMF. They do not want you to talk about it. And when you look at the standards in place, they openly say on their websites that those standards are not related to biological outcomes. Then what are they? How can you have a standard related to health if it doesn't have a biological threshold that you go, okay, that's a safe threshold? Because they're saying it's a safe threshold, and then the next sentence, these agencies say, well, actually, it's not related to biological outcomes. It's related to other things, random heating of tissue and things in relationship to microwaving yourself. We all know if you microwave yourself, you're going to heat up. That's the last thing you want. What's happening way before that, which is the continuous levels of signal that people get out of everything from their computers, their home domestic supplies, their phones. All of those things are constantly providing something that is impacting the body, and it's the area they don't want you to talk about, they don't want you to look at. And yet, if you look at
if I can interrupt there, Cyril, there's a couple of things I just want to unpack for people, because some people listening to this for the first time, they may be aware of EMFs could be a danger or that it has an impact, but they may not even know what exactly that means. So electrical fields or radio frequencies, everything from your AM, FM radio, right up to your mobile phone towers, your cordless home phone, your Wi-Fi at home, and then transmitting data between towers, right? They're electrical fields. And then we've got magnetic fields, which are different again. That's where, like you taught me the other day when you did my consult from my house, where we split the neutral and the negative, created a magnetic field. In my meter box, which was only 1.5 feet from my head when I was waking up for a year, feeling like my head was in a microwave, it was within the magnetic field of my meter box at home in my bedroom, and that was hurting me. So, do you have anything else to help people understand what these types of fields are, just so they're clear? It's everything. Yeah,
the focus for most people when they worry about EMF is often, where is the closest 5G tower to them or something of this nature, and that's relevant, absolutely. And in fact, 5G has actually done us all a favour, because the general public have gone, well, hang on a minute, there's something here that we don't understand, or it's not been researched enough, or it's being rolled out without a conscious look at where it's going and how it's impacting people. And
that's how I met Chris. It was at a presentation. It was a rally at the Sunshine Coast about an education kind of thing, where people are going, hang on, what's 5G? That's where I met Chris.
so as a result of that technology coming out, people have started to go, hang on, there is something else happening. And when they start looking into it, they go beyond maybe just that 5G and realize that the 4G and the 3G was also causing issues. But it hadn't reached that 100th monkey point of, hang on a minute, as a community, people weren't paying attention. And when you look at those technologies, they're only one area of electric field, electromagnetic information transfer between towers and between equipment. The Internet of Things is intended to provide communications between almost every device, including people's clothes and their toasters and their fridges. And it's just stuff that, you know, initially you go, well, I don't need this. I don't need it. So why is it being sold to me? And it's because there's a commercial element to it where if they know what's in your fridge, they know how often you use something, they can tailor marketing to you. So it's not for us. It's for the commercial benefits of the people that own and run these major industries. Look, there's been an awful lot of research, and there's the Bio Initiative that was done 10 years ago almost now, and that had a few dozen doctors and professors from all around the world who wrote about a 1,500-page document that is loaded with testing showing that basically industry is not looking at the right place when it comes to, are we being affected? And they offered a whole range of solutions that weren't too crazy at all, and yet they were completely ignored. And it is a document that's worth looking at. And like we stock these books. I don't know if you can see that there. It's on our website. That's a catalogue of testing that's been done globally, and there are thousands of studies in here. It's on our website, and we want to. Well, in fact, we're the only people in Australia who stock that. It comes from Europe, but there's a lack of tangible information and easy access of getting proper studies and things. And part of it is, yeah, go on. I can see
what website's that, Cyril? Where can people buy that book?
If they go to emfbusters.com.au, that's the easy one to remember. emfbusters.com.au.
Yeah, and you've already raised that subject because that was one of my questions for you today. That, you know, there's a lot of controversy over it. How could big telecommunications companies possibly sell us technology that we use and put on our skin every day, and unless we read the fine print, we realize we're not supposed to use it like that. We're supposed to keep it off our head, you know, because there is a lot of science behind this, isn't there? There's a lot of references that you've shown me and Chris has shown me.
It's huge. Yeah, and as one of your viewers said, it's been very active in Europe for decades. Building biologists actively looking at buildings and trying to resolve issues. Right here in Australia, we've got a very small number of building biologists, and we've got a massive population spread over a large coastline. And it's people don't get easy access to people who can do proper tests and check. So we're here trying to support other building biologists, and we work from an engineering point of view. So we're looking strictly at the RF and EMF side of things, but we provide materials and equipment and education to building biologists and others and electricians and the domestic public trying to resolve their issues. So it's a major part of what we do. And that's why Chris Henderson and I do quite a lot of public talks, trying to get people to reassess and look at things and understand it. You've just provided a really good example, actually. You know, you pick the phone up and you put it next to your head, okay? And you look at the TV and you look at the magazines and you look at the cinema, and everywhere you look, somebody is showing you how to use that phone, put it next to your head. And yet in their own testing, in their own industry testing, it says don't do it. Somebody's just missed the .com.au on there, so it's emfbusters.com.au. We're in Australia, so .com.au. I've done
it. Okay, third time lucky. emfbusters.com.au.
Now what I was saying was the testing for the mobile phone, in their own testing, it says don't put it next to your head, because it even fails their heating tests themselves. They're saying don't do it. The phones were given approval for usage if they put in the instructions not to put it next to your head. And depending on the type of phone you've got, it actually tells you what distance, minimum distance you have to be away. Well, some of it's like 15 millimeters, some of it's 25 millimeters. You're not standing there with a ruler, are you? You know, I've got a ruler here somewhere, you know. I'm not standing there with a ruler on my head going, oh, well, I can only go to here, right?
Yeah,
you don't do that. What do? You either put it next to your head and you break all those rules and they're telling you it's going to cause issues, or you don't put it next to your head. The ergonomics of the phone draw you in to put it next to your head, and it is not intended to be used that way. They specifically tell you not to do it, and yet that's what happens. And that's only one thing. The insurance companies, right?
Or sell you devices that can make it even worse. The Bluetooth your head. I love these things. My AirPods made life convenient.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I was listening to stuff all day. I'm always listening to podcasts and YouTubes and always learning, right, about really weird, geeky, healthy stuff. And I was loving that. And I noticed I started missing words again, because when I was very sick, my memory went, and I was missing words, and I was missing whole subjects. It was scary, but recovered from that. And my memory started to play up again. I saw a YouTube from Dr. Pompa, chiropractor, loves redox technology, you know, really EMF aware, right into water fasting, all sorts of stuff. And he had a meter, and he showed that this went up to double the amount of electro field that would cause cell damage. I stopped using it. Within a week, my memory came back. Couldn't believe it. These have been on the shelf now for over a year and a half.
Cyril,
hey,
Cyril, Justin, Cyril, can I just add, Cyril, you know, you mentioned that the studies with the phone in terms of proximity. I think also in terms of that study, that was based on a 6'1" adult male holding the phone against the head for 6 minutes a day maximum.
Yeah, that's right.
That was crazy. So 6 minutes over a week, I do the math. I mean, that will be just destroyed in a day for most people.
Well, they came up with a maximum of 30 minutes over 7 days. And when they did that study, they said that would be their expectation for heavy usage of a mobile phone. And they haven't repeated the test because they just don't want to get involved in what the real world is, where people are using a phone for 6-8 hours a day. And my business partner on the Sunshine Coast, she died of a brain tumor, and she was using a phone and a laptop on wireless continuously all day, running a clinic.
Oh, but they're not called laptops anymore, Cyril.
No, because they
and this is how subtle it is, right? Because we're all conditioned to call them laptops, but they're actually called notebooks now. Why are they no longer laptops? Because they're not healthy to be on your lap. It's insidious, isn't it? It's very hard to be discerning in a marketplace where, you know, we want convenience and you know, there are these great technologies that can give us that, but there can be these secret dangers behind it. And that's the whole purpose of this conversation, is to really help people be aware that there is a lot of evidence to show that there is some serious dangers behind this stuff, and all the things that the government and the regulators put in to help us be safe are just nowhere near adequate. And I remember, Chris, on the first presentation I saw you give, you said that every other country in the world, the rating, whatever it was 10, and the Australian regulator was 1,000. We're the only country in the whole world that had a rating over 10. Do you remember? I forget what that scale was.
I think that was, Cyril, that was one of the slides you put out with the power density of the network.
And it was the Australian regulator that came up with that. We're over 100 times over every other country in the world. Frightening.
Yeah, it appears to be an experiment. And we seem to be doing a lot of experiments, don't we, on society at the moment?
Yes.
But it is a bit of an experiment. If one country is using something that's maybe 1,000 times more than another country with the same technology, it shows that, you know, if Austria can have a phone network that runs on a 100th of what we run on, well, why do we need to run a system as high as we are? Now, I know there are issues when it comes to distance and things of this nature, but about engineering is about finding solutions to these things, and not blanketly ignoring them or refusing to acknowledge them, and that can be an issue. So at the end of the day, that's the system we're in at the moment. So it's up to everybody to recognize where they are and go, okay, do I want to maybe give myself an edge by sleeping in a room that literally doesn't have an electric field or a magnetic field and doesn't have penetrating radio frequency? When you do that, just like taking those ear pods out of your head, you can recover really fast, and suddenly your body goes into a resting cycle you might not even recognize. REM sleep, a lot of people know what REM sleep is, but they can't remember ever having it, which is where you start dreaming and you start having incredible dreams, and your body's in such a wonderful resting state. And it's one indicator that if you're not getting that type of change in sleep, the chances are that your body's recognizing the electric field that's coming out of the wall that literally penetrates through the wall into the bed, into the person, and we can read it on the body, and literally turn the power off until they see the body voltage drop away, and we can prove it's happening. And when you make changes to someone's bedroom, they start detoxing these things, and suddenly where they were feeling highly sensitive when they go to shopping centers and places, they start not noticing it. They start being able to function, because now they're only taking toxins of EMF in a limited way through the day, not 24 hours a day. Creating that space, that period of rest has a massive impact on people's health. And it can be as simple as going to the fuse box and turning the power off. And I know that sounds a bit dramatic. I did that for 2 years because I was in a rented property, and I didn't have an easy way of resolving it. Now we've got a canopy. You drop a big canopy over the bed, and that was so effective. It shuts down all the electric fields, and we can prove it. We test it, we measure it, we prove it. And then we get good rest, and the body makes the recovery it wants, and it makes better use of the nutrition and other elements that you're introducing to your body, instead of battling uphill all the way.
Well, this is a good segue to talk a little bit about you coming to do the consult for me, Cyril. So probably, can't remember, a couple of years ago, David, you did put all the filters in. We tested the dirty electricity in my electric outputs all through the house. We used a heap of those filters, or what are they, Stetzer filters or something?
This was Stetzer dirty.
Yeah, the Stetzer filters.
That's it, the Stetzer filters from Germany. It dropped everything down to an acceptable level, according to David and the meter. It was looking pretty good. But recently I put on a very big solar system, thinking for the future about renewable energy and, less chemicals, and electric car potential in the future. And I knew that was going to have an impact to my electrical grid. So therefore I got in touch with Cyril and asked him to come and do a consult. And the house is a mess. Still got all those filters in, but now I've got solar power, and probably a lot of my neighborhood in the last couple of years has got a huge amount of solar power. And it's just blown the grid, so that, you're testing me on the bed. I'm not touching anything but the bed, and I'm maxing out on the meter at 2,300. I'm an expert in all this, like hertz and
what's happening is you're jumping from thing to thing. So let's categorize what dirty power is, okay? So EMF is electromagnetic frequencies, and that's a general phrase, and it covers everything from light all the way through the spectrum to radio frequencies, etc. So you've got electric fields, you've got the stuff in your house, you've got your mobile devices, all the rest of it. And within that, you've got different characteristics, okay? Now, dirty power is where you've got what would normally be the sinusoidal waveform. It goes up and down 50 times a second here in Australia, and that's AC power. Now, you see inverters and you see, equipment registered as saying pure sine wave. And it sounds lovely, doesn't it? Pure sine wave. But when we put an oscilloscope in, it's far from actually pure sine wave. And in fact, in your kitchen, we put an oscilloscope on the bench there, and we plugged it in, and we could see not only the alternating power, which is what you were buying to run your house, but you also had all that aggressive energy that literally was like a fog of energy all over the power, vibrating away, and that's seen to the body like a toxin, a poison. It doesn't want to see it, and that's on top of the 50 hertz, which on PubMed, which is one of the government peer-reviewed websites where all the medical reviews of testing of various things occurs, and you can read the documents. In there, they specifically state that they found that the 50 hertz supply alone can induce Epstein-Barr in the body. Well, if you lie on a bed, you know, with a headboard right next to the power sockets and the power's in the wall, and we're measuring elevated electrical fields in your body, you're throwing 50 hertz supplies into your body, and that's where you run into this risk of really inducing these issues. Now, the dirty power we clean so that when you're using your computer and you're active during the day, it's as smooth as it can be. And the studies have been done all over the world to see what happens. Brittle diabetes and things like this occurs when you're in the presence of dirty power. And it's been proven in the studies that when they applied filtering, it dramatically changed those situations. But that's only, let's say, improving a bad situation. When you go to bed, that's the opportunity to get rid of the electric field. You don't need it on when you're in bed, so why not just shut it out and let the body go back to its own resting state? So there's lots of different components. When we measured your house, we looked outside to see what the street was, providing with power from towers and everybody else's Wi-Fi. Then we went in the house and we had a look at how well the walls were shielding you from what was coming in. So even though you weren't running a router or Wi-Fi or your phones, we still could see your neighbors and basically the whole housing estate Wi-Fi running through your place.
I've shared my screen and just flicking through the very extensive report you sent me about the different things that are going on. I want people to understand this, unfortunately, is a very complex subject with a lot of moving parts, but your approach is very much a holistic approach. That's even a picture of my meter box there where I've got a massive magnetic field there. So, I know you've got some slides of a house, a old Queenslander. Did you want to run us through?
Yeah, it's just a couple of slides, but it shows you that when you look at a house, it was a house that David actually took me to. David and I had a look at it for a lady, and she'd been suffering repeated illnesses here, and we really wanted to see, was there anything obvious? Now, if I go to the share button here,
technical moment. Yeah, it was pretty shocking, David. Like, my house was great when you did it. Thank you for that. And then I went and buggered it up with all the solar power.
So this is a typical wooden Queenslander house, okay, and it looks quite nice. It's nicely painted and everything. So let's have a look now with our engineer eyes, okay? Let's have a look. So in the top of the screen, you can see that there's the black cables coming in from the street, okay? So that's your power supply, okay? Now, they're live, and they remain live until they get to the little box on the right-hand side of the wall, which is the fuse box. So if I put a line in there, let me see if I can do that. Oh, there you go. Oh, no, back again. Right, there you go. I'll put a red line in. Now, that red line is basically showing you where the cable goes. So there's a wooden house. It's laying on the ceiling inside the bedroom, and it goes down the wall. So it's a wooden wall, so there's no shielding there. It goes into that box, and then it breaks out to fuses and breakers, and then it's distributed around the house. But to the right of that, I think there is a solar inverter as well. So it's got power coming from the roof as well. So this is live, and you can't turn it off because that's the supply to the house, and it's live from the street. So 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, even if you turn the switches off, it's still live, and it radiates about 2.5, 3 meters through the air. And it's looking for something that conducts really well. It wants to be on a wire, it wants to be on something really conductive, and a salt water solution, minerals that we are we are perfect conductors. We're an antenna for it. We pull that electrical field into our body, and it changes our pH levels. It changes our electrical fields. It literally has an influence all the way through our electrical function. So that wire alone is influencing the whole of that room. Now, that's the circle I've put around it, around the junction box, because that junction box produces a magnetic field. Because as you were saying before, when you separate live and neutral, the electric field no longer holds back the magnetic field, and it generates this magnetic field that goes through virtually anything. That is penetrating into that bedroom, similar to what we had at your home, and your head was right next to the junction box, not dissimilar to where we are looking now with this one. Now, there is another issue in that bedroom where we've got magnetic and electric fields coming from compressors that are set underneath the bed. So the Queenslander, because it's got a meter and a half or so from the ground underneath, the electricians thought it would be a great place to put the compressors for the aircon under the main bed of the house. So now you've got all the power cables to it, and then when it fires up, you've got the field that comes out of it. Not what you would choose, right? Now, how much impact are these items having on that room? Well, that's really what's going on. That blue is like a no-go area where you are totally saturated with electric fields. And we haven't even talked about radio frequency, towers, Wi-Fi from your neighbor, smart meters, all those other elements. We're just looking at the electric field of the house, even if you didn't have any of that. So when you start looking at those other elements, it becomes difficult. So what do? Well, we look at a room like this and we go, the material it's made of doesn't hold back electric fields, but it's very easy to turn that room into a shielded room. The walls you can paint with conductive paint that we import and then provide, that literally carries the electrical field around and to the ground. The magnetic field, which previously has always been considered like impossible to deal with, we now have the technology to deal with it. We bring in cobalt laminated foils that have an incredible reduction of magnetics, and the closer we can get to the source, the junction box, the better. And we basically put it in the back of the junction box and earth it out, and then you've dramatically reduced those. And we've provided this same technology to medical companies and the floor of medical centers and receptions where power cables are going through the floor, and we just lay that down, and it several layers sometimes, and it will shut down that magnetic field. Something that in the past people haven't known it could be done. We haven't had the equipment or the technology. There was some very expensive, very difficult to work with things called mu metal, and it's the sort of thing that really is for a battleship or a tank, not really for your own home. But this foil, it's like a wrapping paper that you might have for Christmas. It's very thin, very light, easy to work with. So that's something we now provide to building biologists and electricians and anybody who's constructing something where there are junction boxes. It really should be, made a standard. People should have it in them because it works so well and it's low cost. It's brilliant.
Be great to be a part of the building code, hey? But there's a lot of other issues with the building code before we get to that. But that's great. Let's move on to some of the solutions, because yes, there's the cobalt shielding, particularly good for the magnetic side of things. We've got the graphite paint and the grounding wire, but you've also got your canopies you talked about. And going back to, we're covered, like the world now, if you live on the world, you're going to have electric fields, you're going to have magnetic fields. It's not like you can get away from them. But you can protect yourself when you sleep. There's critical time where, 7.5, 8 hours a day, where you've got a genetic clock and your body wants to detox. It wants to maximize its immune system. It wants to kick into its circadian rhythm. And it's about protecting this rejuvenation time, this sleep time. So what are some of the more simple solutions that you've got now access and able to give people to protect their sleep, Cyril?
Look, canopies are excellent. I've been really impressed, particularly now having one myself that we use every day, and I can actually just throw my phone in there and it just shuts down. It's got no network of any sort. I can't even see the Wi-Fi, even if I turn the Wi-Fi on, which is only about 4 or 5 meters away in another room in a wooden building. So the Wi-Fi just runs straight through, and yet it still shuts it down to the point it can't operate. So that to me is a really nice practical test that anybody can do. We do testing with expensive meters and things as well, but from a practical point of view, it's
on
easy.
that, expensive meters, because I had some people when they heard about the show, they were like, oh, can you get Cyril to advertise some inexpensive meters? So that one's around the $60,000 mark, right? So
with the kits, yeah, with the range of probes, yeah. Look, the thing is, there are very low cost simple meters that are out there that basically give you a great false sense of security, because if it says nothing, you go, oh, that's great, and yet what it is, it's telling you it's not capable of reading what's actually going on, and that's an issue. It seems a bit cruel to call them toys, but to be honest, they are toys. Even some of the very expensive sort of amateur ones that maybe go to 8 gigahertz, for example, and people might pay $2,000 or $3,000 for them. Because
it's not doing the range of things, and this is where I was very impressed with your testing. You tested everything, like as much as you possibly could. You had a very diverse range of testing. You did talk about the challenge with that is that it's currently requiring you to be on site. And to have that very expensive equipment to do it. But you did start to talk about in the future, you want to produce and help produce some meters that are a lot more affordable for people to have a fairly simple sense of what's going on, but the solutions don't really change.
That's right.
So you provide the solutions, you're going to deal with it.
Yeah, look, there's some websites that people can go and have a look at, not to find low-cost meters, because to be honest, they're sort of a false economy a lot of the time, because if you've got a meter that just goes to 8 gig, for example, and you look at one of the websites and you can see that it's for example surrounded by maybe 15, 18, 20 gig, 30 gig transmitters, and you've got an 8 gig meter. All you're doing is going, well, yeah, I'm just proving I can't read it. But you can see it on the website now. It's almost got to the point where the test is, if you can see a window, right, and you can see daylight, yes, then you're drowning in EMF, because that's actually what's happening. That's just saved you a lot of money in meters. If you go to, there's 2 websites that are really probably useful for people to have a look at. One is an app as well. You can find it in the App Store, and that's RF-NSA. Right, so RF as in radio frequency, NSA, right, November Sierra Alpha, and that is it's an app you can get on your phone. Wherever you're standing, you can press the button. It'll tell you where the closest towers are. You can see exactly what the declared transmissions are, etc. So you can see whether it's got 5G, 4G, 3G, whether it's 4GX, 4G. All the different settings. It just shows you straight away, shows you your distance from them. That gives you an easy starting point, RF-NSA. The other one is a website that is ACMA, and you just go ACMA and map, I think will do it. So ACMA map, and it'll show you, you just put your address in and you just say, well, what's closest to me? And it will show you lots of dots, and you can click on any of those and you can then get a list of the transmitters there. And there's also a profile where you can click it and it will show you whether there are mountains in between you or forests, or if it is a clear line of sight straight through your bedroom window. And that actually raises a point, right? We're talking about painting a window, or sorry, painting a wall, but you don't want to paint your window, do you? So how do you shield that? Well, you can easily do that through shielding materials and fabrics that look just like curtains. They're beautiful, easy to use. Or you can double that up by adding foil, which is a little bit like the window tint you'd have in a car, except it's specifically designed to shut down RF, radio frequencies. So the hole in the wall that would have been a porthole for energy to come in, you can dramatically reduce it using the foils that we provide, and they're designed for people to fit themselves if they wish. And that's a really useful tool that's attractive, easy, and it does start resolving those issues in a bedroom. It allows you to close everything up and go, okay, I'm now going to sleep in a quiet environment and start detoxing the body.
Absolutely. Thank you, Cyril. Yep. And I need to actually talk to you. I've rethought about how I'm going to do my blinds. I am going to do foil on some windows and material on some roller blinds, and really looking forward to getting our bedroom and our daughter's bedroom sorted, because was horrified and shocked by the amount of electrical field and magnetic field in my house. And that was an interesting thing. You were testing my house, and we knew the meter box had a big magnetic field, but we found the opposite wall in the bedroom also had one. And you said that's probably been a fault with the building where they've split the wire. And I imagine a lot of electricians and tradesmen, they're just not aware. A simple mistake on a building site like that, where they think, oh, well, the wire's still connected, it's not like a short, it's not going to cause a fire, but it can create this invisible magnetic field that could have some serious health implications on a person.
Yeah, long term, and hidden energies like that. That is where you can get a low-cost meter in the magnetic range. You can get a low-cost meter for $40–50, and there you can find the magnetic fields. And that's the one test that really we can't do maybe over the phone, so to speak, or over Zoom when we're speaking to clients, where you can easily get a low-cost magnetic meter, and then you'll be able to find values to see if a room is clear of that type of thing, particularly if it's had wiring added over years. If there are live and neutral separated, sometimes you start getting that. And also if they add an additional link in neutral, then it has a disproportionate current in the live. And what happens is then you suddenly get that magnetic field again. And that's bad workmanship when it comes to the wiring. But that is one place you could get a low-cost meter. But as soon as you get into the RF electric field side, when you're talking meters that, you know, we've got antennas around us going the 40–60 gig. There's one in Albany which is 90-something gig. You know, that's in Western Australia, and the council use it to transmit backwards and forwards between their buildings. It's a microwave link. Well, those types of technologies are being used by councils all over the country now. And if you walk in with an 8 gig meter, you've got no idea what's going on around you. Even a 10 gig meter is not going to do it.
Yeah. So look, because I've actually got some real world experience with this, and I'm still often very confused about the different types of measurements, the gigs, the ratios, you know, the meters and all that sort of stuff. For people that are listening to this on a call or listening to the replay, the main things are that they don't necessarily need to have to understand all of the numbers, but they do need to understand that the threat is real. It's science, it's evidence-based, and it's becoming more and more common. And there are ways to test it, simple ways to test it, and solutions that are available right now.
We encourage people. We've got a free phone number. People just ring us up, and then we're happy to spend some time with them over the phone and go, okay, tell me what environment you're in. Just tell me the address. Let's have a look on the website. Show them how to find the information, and if they can give us, let's say, the dimensions of their bedroom, we can literally calculate how much paint's required, how much grounding materials required, to the litre. And then for a window, we've got cutting software that calculates a cutting sheet, and then we know exactly the most efficient way to cover people's windows. And that's a very easy service that we provide, and we don't have to get to the point where someone might spend quite a bit of time and money with us, visiting them and having to do maybe a day, because as you saw, it's not a 10-minute event. I'm there for maybe 3 to 6 hours to get to the bottom of what's happening. But very often it's always the same problem. Shield the wall, shield the window. Let's get rid of those issues and sleep and recover. That's what you're after.
and you put up with all my 20 questions because I'm fairly renowned for asking a lot of questions about stuff. I'm a very curious kind of a person. Yeah, well, I really appreciate that about you. You had a very grounded approach and a very, value for money approach. Like, how do we do this in the most sustainable and the most effective way for the least amount of time, money, and energy? And, there's a lot of questions going in the chat box there. Well, can we shield cables, all this sort of stuff? Well, I built this house 12 years ago. I love the house. I don't want to move anywhere, but I'm not going to rip all the cable out of the walls and re-cable it. That sort of cost is just too much. And if you can be proactive, and I know you talked to me on the day where you are building some, mansions for very wealthy people, and they're spending the money at build time, which is a better way to do it. But for most of us, it's more of a retrofit that we have approach that we have to deal with it, because the building has been built without this in mind. So, it's more of a case of protection.
More and more people are building from their plans, and we're helping those. And they're not all, super expensive properties. Some of them have been. We've even done them in the deserts in America, where we've done the whole consult and the whole supply of engineering support and everything, equipment supply remotely from here. We've done the whole thing on Zoom. But also people are buying little retirement village houses, and they're going, okay, well, I'm having my little cottage built, and we're going, okay, let's do this now. Let's plan it now. You don't want to have to wait 20 years to repaint it. Let's do it now. Let's get it right. And it works, and it provides the right results for people. So, and David's just had a question. David Penrose. Hi, Dave.
Yeah.
Thanks very much for raising that question. He was asking about grounding. And we do see a lot of people asking about grounding. Look, grounding is maybe a misunderstood thing, okay? And as humans, we love buying toys, which is, one of our little things. Now, grounding is take your shoes off and get in the water, right? Walk on the grass, roll on the ground, get down to earth potential. But it doesn't work the same way when people want to work on a grounding sheet in their bedroom, or they have a pad they put their computer on and all that. Because in each case, there are different events going on that can make things worse. The bed one is particularly an issue, because if you have an electric field coming out of the wall, and then you've got a grounding sheet, the thought is that the electric field is going to the sheet and then going to ground. But if you're the path to the sheet, you've just created a massive rise in electrical voltage in your body, right? You think you've gone to ground because you're connected to ground. But if we put a current meter in place, we'll actually see that the current from the wall is traveling through your body into the conductive sheet and then down the cable to ground. Now that's one thing that's happening. So we've got micro meters that we can measure that to see what's really going on. Because if you haven't shielded the wall, of course, you're dragging the electric field from the wall into you, through you, continuously all night, running this current through you. You're not designed for it, and you didn't intend that when you connected to ground. The other issue is, in a house in Australia, we have what's known as an MEN network, which is a multiple earth neutral. It's a link which is taking the earth and connecting it to the neutral in your house. So if you put an oscilloscope on, and you've got the pictures, I think, of your own place where we looked at what was happening, you're getting all this aggressive signal, and it's sitting on the neutral line and it's connected to the earth. So we're going to potentially bring that aggressive signal back into the earth line and into the body. If you're connecting yourself to ground, you want to make sure you're not drawing other fields through you to ground. And that means put a micrometer in line, a microammeter in line. Yeah, that's it. You see that one there with the blue, the strange blue shapes? That's dirty electricity pulsating out of the inverter. So not an ideal situation, not an ideal situation. And something else about going to bed, and this is something that Chris is going to talk about next week, is it's not just about the invisible electrical fields that we specialize in. Chris helps people recognize the lighting itself is an electric field, and it's penetrating the body, not just through the eye, but through the skin. And we are changing our hormonal processes in that way. And it basically is something that you can make a huge change to your sleeping by recognizing the color of the lights that you're exposing yourself to after dark. And it does make a big, big difference. So Chris is going to do a lot of information of how the history of lighting has got to where it is, and the great breakthroughs that are happening that he's involved with that. So that's another end of that's the visible end of the EMF spectrum.
Yeah, absolutely. Did you want to just contribute a little bit about that, Chris?
Yeah, I just wanted to, thanks for the plug, Cyril. I just wanted to add on top of what Cyril was saying, because we've done a lot of talks together and sort of segue into information. And I found in some of my research, which Cyril now uses in his slides, that Wi-Fi frequencies, actually from the mobile phone frequency to Wi-Fi frequency, affects the vitamin D receptors. So you don't want to be bathing in something that's affecting how your body's taking vitamin D up. Like, come on, like, that is crazy to not remediate that. And another thing, just on the fact a lot of redox people are on this call, the electrical fields affect the redox potential in the cell. Like, the whole transport chain where you break down proteins, fats, and carbohydrates gets affected by electrical fields. So this is affecting us on an unprecedented level metabolically, right? You know, both seen and unseen. So yeah, I sort of specialize in the lighting side because I had my own epiphany, 3 or 4 years ago, where, I had prescription glasses and I didn't want to go to the optometrist, and came across some information about looking at natural light and then blocking blue light at night and things of that nature. And actually, I just want to add, when I met Cyril, I was in Melbourne at the time, in Northcote. We were doing a live Zoom, and because I got 2 autoimmune conditions, I was seriously destroyed on that trip. And that's when he gave me the information about dirty power, Stetzer filters. So I was in this old house at Northcote, which probably would have been wired up like 100 years ago. I had, I think, magnetic, obviously the tram lines on the other side of the house, had 5G everywhere. I didn't sleep a wink for 10 days, and I basically hobbled out of the place, and I vowed never to go back. So for anyone who has significant underlying health conditions, this is a major issue that you have to get serious about. So,
yeah, I think that's a really good point, is that, Cyril, Chris, and I have all turned to the health industry because of our own health challenges, because of personal experience of pain and suffering, and just wanting to be curious and learn about what is natural, how do we live a good life? How do we improve our quality of life? We all got passionate about that in our various fields and experience, and we do our best to share that with others and pay it forward. And we've created a career out of helping people in various ways with health and well-being. And I find that to me is a much more practical, solutions-based approach rather than an academic approach. So I encourage people, when I'm doing my coaching, is to test it for yourself. Whether you're using meters like in Cyril's case, or whether you do some home experiments, you do some kinesiology, you do some bioresonance, you do pathology, you do different testing, but test and measure and play with this stuff. But certainly don't just believe what the mainstream media is talking about. Don't be cautious of the narrative of the large commercial agenda, and start to do some research and take responsibility for your health. Because there is so much that is great in the world, that is happening, that we've got great technologies to minimize a lot of these challenges. Chris, you're bringing out full spectrum lights to Australia, and you partner with a fellow in New Zealand for blocking blue light and all sorts of stuff. And we're going to get much more into that next week. So I highly encourage you to come back at the same time next week, same channel. Chris will be joining us. Cyril, you're welcome to come back and give your input as well. Really appreciate what you've told us today, Cyril, and obviously the websites. I'm going to put them in the links in the Facebook Live, and in the recording. So there'll be show notes in there. This will be uploaded into the Renew with Redox Facebook group, which has over 20,000 people in it. And obviously most of that's about redox technology. However, we have a growing body of complementary and holistic health information in there. And I personally feel, while I love redox, that's my main thing, eliminating EMF out of my life and being aware, mitigating that is really key. Eliminating things like, seed oils and linoleic acid and some of the horrible food that comes in our food chain is important. It's a holistic approach. And it's just one step at a time in the right direction. Get educated, take control of your life, and start to build a good life again. It's not that hard. We can all do this. And as we do it, I saw comments in the chat box. Lorenz was concerned that what if we can't get, cabled earphones in the future? Because, we may not get them from Apple, but consumer demand, someone will make them because we will pay for them. And that's a great thing. At the end of the day, money talks, and people, there are conscientious entrepreneurs out there that will continue to provide great solutions to some of these dangers that we're talking about highlighting. David, did you have something to say?
I was going to say something. We actually control the market because we're the purchasers. Okay. Now, a perfect example of that are Bluetooth speakers. Okay. There's a whole range of them. They're really convenient. Okay. But if you want to use one, great. And it's convenient. But when you choose to turn the Bluetooth off, you need to have a mechanism to turn it off. And those products that have the mechanism to turn it off, they're the ones we should buy so we can use it and we can turn it off. So if you find yourself looking at products where they say, oh no, the Bluetooth is on permanently, please don't buy it. Buy one that does give you the option, and we shape the market. That way we get the options to use it. I'm not saying don't use Bluetooth. I'm saying be cautious in when you use it and volume of it. So you want a button, you just turn it off when you don't want it. Control the market ourselves. Don't be forced by the manufacturer's choices. Yeah.
A great example is Apple. Apple only 2 years ago was going very much wireless. It was removing all its ports on its computers. And I believe in only about a week and a half's time, I'm very excited to get a new computer. I've got a 5-year-old computer, looking forward to an upgrade. And the new ones that are coming out are rumored to have heaps more ports. They've gone back to the old system where you can plug everything in instead of being wireless. So consumer, sometimes it takes a couple of years for Apple to turn that around, but they finally listened and they're like, oh, okay, people like their plugs. They don't want everything wireless. So great. Well said, Cyril. Fantastic. David, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I just want to underline a bit of the stuff that Cyril went over. I was going testing houses because I'm really sensitive in EMFs and it's been a real journey. But you don't see this, and I've spent thousands of dollars on thinking I was doing the right thing on products. In fact, that's a whole new topic for another interview, is you think you're doing the right thing because you're being marketed to, but you're being marketed a whole heap of lies. And there is an element of truth in the marketing, but you can go off doing that. Like when we came to your place, Justin, you had all this earthing stuff plugged in, and I said, that's not going to work. You got to deal with that. And so what I found was I could do all these things, but then Cyril came in and he had all the gear, he had the experience and electronically. So he could just say, you need to do this. And like we're dealing with health, no body is the same, no house is the same. So it's not always a bread and butter approach. You've got to look at what factors are affecting all of that. And that's where the experience and the consult from him is just epic. So I really encourage you to do those sorts of things. Even if you're considering moving somewhere, you can actually get low-level things. Anyway, enough on that.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you, David. Well, welcome. Thank you very much, everyone, for being a part of the call. Thank you so much for being really active in the chat box. Obviously, please share this far and wide. We want the world to wake up and for the consumer power to start to take more of a hold and more power to having these good options. Next week is Could Blue Light Be Killing Your Sleep? And Chris will really go into his discussion around natural light, artificial light, vitamin D, and the massive health impacts that can be having and what you can do about it. Again, having a solution-based approach. So thank you, everyone, for joining us, and have a wonderful week. Have a good life. Bye for now.
Thanks, Justin. Nice to meet you guys.
Thank you, Cyril. Bye, Chris.
Yeah.